it would be rude not to bring you on as somebody who is a karate expert and not talk about two things. One thing.
We're saying Danielson.
I was going to say two things. Karate Kid, but the spin-off series Cobra Kai.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on that?
I only watched a little bit of Cobra Kai. It's okay. Everything's like obviously dramatised, isn't it? Because it's for a TV series or like for the films. Yeah.
It's one of my most favourite films ever, and it has to be. It's just everything about it, and Mr. Miyagi, and just the whole film. And it's brilliant.
Welcome back to the Sports Dentistry podcast. It's 2026 anymore. The podcast has upgraded. We're now doing video online podcasting.
Yes, we are. And the only reason we're doing that is so you can at least get your merch on. Bought all the stuff and you never wear it. So
had to spend 30 minutes trying to find it.
Well, while you were trying to spend time finding your shirt, I've been trying to spend time trying to fix my mic, which isn't working. So the professional levels are dropping a little bit. However, we're here, and as you said, video content is now available. I've got my backdrop, but where's your backdrop?
Well, this is technology, isn't it? So my desktop will not let me use the backdrops. We're still finding our feet. Took us a wee while with the audio only, and now with the video on the audio is going to take us a little while to find our feet with it as well. But we're getting there. We've completed the live podcasts, and them episodes went out, and everything's looking pretty good. We're starting to look a little bit like we know what we're doing.
Yeah, I think the video podcast came out really, really well. There was a few teething problems in some of the episodes or some of the recordings, but I think that was because there was a lot of people who were getting interviewed at the same time, and we only had 4 mics and there was 5 people. But all in all, I think the feedback from everybody has been very, very good. And the fact that we've managed to get around and interview so many different people from so many different backgrounds from all over the world and giving them their story and actually putting faces to voices, which is important because, as we've said before, some people have come up to you and have said a few things, or come up to me and said a few things. They've obviously got confused about who's who in the podcast, but now with the video side of things, they can't make those they can't make those errors in judgment.
Yes. So what you're trying to say is I look more Scottish than you do.
That's exactly right, mate.
That's the consensus. Come out of our audio only podcast.
You look more Scottish, I look more Irish.
Yeah. But yeah, we're moving on, and you've got me roped into doing more traveling. We're just back. I've just recovered from our trips to Dusseldorf and a trip to Cape Town, and you've roped me in to do more traveling.
Well, when people come asking to help them out with conferences, and if we are able to bring our expertise in interviewing people and our background in dentistry, then we can't say no. So we'd obviously had a conversation with ADEC last year, and there's been a lot of negotiations going backwards and forwards. But we got to the point over the holidays when, we signed, sealed and delivered our commitment to going over to Dubai next week to cover the ADEC conference. So 3-day conference at the Novotel World Trade Center out there, which is going to be very exciting. It looks like there's loads of really, really interesting presentations, interesting speakers, sponsors. I think it should be good fun, and it's something, again, doing the live interviews it can be quite challenging because you're on the spot and you're trying to think about the next question and also what the person's saying. But we've done it in Dusseldorf, we've done it in Cape Town. How hard can it be in Dubai?
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward just to see the size of the conference. Now, we've talked about the conferences this year and sports dentistry conferences, but they're only minor conferences compared to this ADAC conference. We're looking up at just the amount of high-profile industry leaders, whether that's with equipment or material or education, that are going to be there and presenting their work. I'm really interested to see just the level. I think what the European equivalent is the one that runs in Cologne every 3 years. And you often hear anybody that's been to that to talk about just how big conference it is and how much is going on. So I'm going to be really interested just to see what it's like and how it's laid out, because we've run a few conferences now, but we're running them for 50 to 100 people what's it like? I was looking at their website and they said they get over 75,000 visitors at the conferences. So it's really interesting, just even how they're able to manage that amount of people and provide enough interest for people to come back. So looking forward to that.
Like you said, it's getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, and going from 50 to 100 people to potentially 75,000 people over 3 days is a massive increase. But like you said, there'll be lots of interesting people there. There'll be lots of conversations to be had, and I think it should open up our eyes in terms of how we approach sports dentistry, not just here in the UK, but worldwide, in terms of how we can take it further and what we can learn from it. I think that's really important, to be able to come back and say, okay, this is what they did differently, or this is what we can learn from and what we can do. It's a good opportunity to get out there. And when they first approached us, we weren't really sure how it was going to work and what it was that we needed to do. But it's one of these things, we've kind of committed to it now, and we've done this for just short of a year, and it's something that I enjoy doing. And I know it's something you enjoy doing, and meeting different people, and you just don't know where the conversations are going to go, and there will be an opportunity hopefully to network quite well when we're there as well. So all we can do is put our game faces on and keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best.
Yeah, that's what I want to see how it goes. And when we're looking into I've never been to Dubai, hasn't really been a place that was overly interesting going to. It must be just because it's so warm. I was saying the same thing with Cape Town. Maybe it's just because it just looks too warm for me. But when I started looking into it, there's quite a lot of sports dentistry going on, and we've got lined up a few guests to come on while we're over there. So looking forward to that. We've even been lucky enough to land at the same time one of the golf competitions is on, with some of the big hitters in golf taking part as well this weekend, and we'll arrive in the last day. So it's going to be interesting as well to see just what sort of setup there is from a sports perspective. Is some sports something that's really grown there? I know from being fortunate enough to attend the EcoSep conference that was in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, I could see just how much they were pushing to develop sport in Saudi Arabia with the coming up to the World Cup, and then you had Qatar as well. So you have a lot of big competitions going to that region. So it's going to be interesting to see what's happening in Dubai, and is the UAE really pushing sports as well.
Yeah, and it's important to stress, it's not just going to be dentists that we're going to be chatting with. There is medics, there is people who are involved with recovery for athletes, potentially some other people who are involved with healthcare. So we like to bring different people to the table, give people different voices, because as we know, sport is a holistic approach and is a multidisciplinary approach, and it's really crucial that we do give opportunities for people to showcase their skills and be able to showcase how they manage to get involved in sport, whether it's amateur or elite level. And like you say, it lands on with the DP World Tour at the same time, so we'll see if we can make that work. But talking about conferences and talking about what other things are coming up this year, we've obviously not spoken too much about the next UK Sports Dentistry Conference, which is happening in Glasgow on July 24th during the Commonwealth Games. So can you give the listeners a little bit more information about what's happening then?
Yes, and this leads nicely into our guest for this episode. We've decided to line up this conference as I spoke about before in the podcast, how in the UK we like the idea of education, conference dinner for networking and sport. And we want to try to keep mixing the sports up. It's very easy for us to always do rugby because we've got good contacts there. Rugby always do a great hospitality options as well. But the last time we went to the cricket, so we got that box ticked, so we don't need to go back to the cricket ever again. So then but this time we're decided to line it up, especially because this is the sort of conversation I think it might be interesting for our listeners to understand the types of discussions that we have when we're looking at when to run the conference. We got feedback from our attendees at a good time that we ran it maybe a little bit early in September last year. It was sort of mid-September, early September. And people were saying that it would have been better if it was a few weeks later, just with schools going back and just the time of the year with the holidays. And we looked at that, and then we all looked at the other side of the summer before going into the summer, maybe like something around March, April time. But we thought with this year, with the Commonwealth Games being in Glasgow, and with the last two times the Commonwealth Games, it was in Birmingham the last time, but that was meant to be held, I think, in South Africa. And then this time it was meant to be held in Australia. So they weren't actually meant to be in the UK. So I thought if they're going to happen this year, they may not be back in the UK for 8 to 12 years. So it'd be great to link in with the Commonwealth Games whenever they're here this year. And another sort of topic that sparked a bit of interest, particularly with our guest that's on today as well, but also our good friend Lyndon Main that was on. He was pushing for this as well, where he was saying it'd be great to have an educational day about power athletes and how sports dentistry can support power athletes. So we've linked the UK Sports Dentistry event in this year. It's going to be in July. It's going to be on Friday. I believe the Friday's the 25th. It's the first Friday of the Commonwealth Games. We're going to do the educationing. It's going to be held in Glasgow. We're going to do the education during the day, nice conference dinner, and then we've lined up to go to the powerlifting. And I know from previous major competitions, the last time in Glasgow, I was working at the boxing event. It was all held in the big, where the hydro is, beside the hydro. There's a sort of equivalent of the Excel that they have in London. And there was 4 or 5 different sports. So you had boxing in one hall, but you had the powerlifting also in the same facility, and the atmosphere at the powerlifting. It wasn't something I would ever think about going to watch all the time. Maybe you look at the highlights to see who won gold and things like that. But the atmosphere at the powerlifting is meant to be fantastic. So it's going to be a great sporting event at the powerlifting. So if anybody has the ability to come in, jot it into the diaries now. The actual venue of during the day is still to be confirmed, but it will be in Glasgow on Friday the 25th of July, and we'll be heading to the powerlifting as part of Sport in the Evening.
Yeah, I think it's Friday the 24th of July.
24th, I knew it was right, yeah. Close enough. We're only into 2026, so
yeah,
still working the dates out.
Yeah, I think when we looked at dates or events to do this year, we kind of narrowed it down to the considerations, what people said last year in terms of time of year. And it's just lucky that it's in July and it's in, I know it's Scotland again. I know we did it in Edinburgh the first time round. It's in Glasgow, but look, Glasgow's got trains, it's got planes, it's got whatever you want. You can get the ferry over from Ireland, you can drive across. There's loads of ways to get here. So I think it's important to say that yes, it is in Glasgow, it's back in Scotland again. However, we are conscious that we want to take it around the UK, so it's not going to be something where it's just always going to be, Scotland or England. We are going to venture out to Wales and Ireland as well. It's just because of the event that we're looking at, and it's really important that we do talk about para-athletes and we give them the time of day as well, because it's something that's overlooked quite a lot. And we've said that quite a lot in the podcast, where it's something that we need to speak more about. And our good friend Lyndon Meehan does, advocate for para-athletes. And the reason our next guest is not the main reason that she's coming on, but actually when I flew into Dusseldorf and I arrived, the very first thing that I walked into was her giving her presentation, explaining her dissertation when she did the sports dentistry program through UCL. And I was taken aback in terms of some of the stories that she was explaining. And then I spoke to Peter, and Peter was like, that was like an amazing project that she did, and the amount of effort and time that she put into it. But it was actually really enjoyable to hear her talk and to be able to go into such detail about what she did and the passion that she had for it as well. So if you want to take the lead and introduce our next guest, my friend.
Yes, so our guest for this podcast is Lisa Brocklesby, which is tricky to say, because not so much as tricky to say, but she told me in Dust that she had called Lisa Broccoli for a while, and that's just stuck in my head. So, so I'm trying to not trip myself up by making sure I can pronounce her surname. But Lisa did do I think it was maybe was it the year after UCL? She did the Masters in UCL, and her dissertation was into power athletes and the oral health of power athletes. What I found really interesting was, because I don't work with power athletes myself, it was some of the things that I would never have thought about, some of the challenges that they had to face that able-bodied athletes don't, especially when it comes to the oral health. So it was really interesting to hear that. And also another interesting thing about Lisa is you were quite surprised after seeing her present to hear that she was actually a black belt
in karate.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no messing with her. 100% no messing with her. But she is the most loveliest person. We got to spend a lot of time with her and her husband Sean in Dusseldorf, and they were good crack and they were good value. And I'm really excited for people to hear her story. It's very different, it's very unique, and she's a very high level athlete herself. And once we've had that chat with her, it was really important that we kind of got her her story across, because she's just a nice person, and she's done something that not a lot of us have had the opportunity to do with regards to, you know, dealing or looking after para athletes or athletes with needs. So yeah, hopefully this conversation will be insightful and interesting to our listeners.
Yes, looking forward to it. So let's go. Gives me great pleasure to welcome onto the Sports Dentistry podcast this week, Lisa Brocklesby. Got it right second time around. So Lisa, I've had the pleasure of getting to know you for a while, because you did the MSc with UCL, and Umar's had the pleasure to meet you and spend some time with you recently in Dusseldorf as well. But for our listeners that maybe don't know yourself, just give us a little bit of a background to yourself, how you got into dentistry and how that developed into sports dentistry.
Yeah, so I graduated from the University of Sheffield in 2017. The reason I kind of got into dentistry was from kind of my own experience. So I've had lots of injuries and dental injuries over the years due to my sports. And that's kind of like pushed me into dentistry. So yeah, so went to University of Sheffield. I wanted to go there because that's where I'm from, and I wanted to carry on competing with my sports. And then once I graduated from there, completed foundation training in the area, and then worked in general practice. And then I thought I want to do something more. Saw an advert in the BDJ about the sports dentistry program. I was actually going to apply to Uma your year in 2019, but the reason I didn't was because I was due to get married in 2020, and then we were due to go on honeymoon, and I was also due to go to the Tokyo Olympics because I had friends who were potentially competing. So I was going there to try and watch them. So obviously ended up postponing, but then COVID hit, so did the MSc program then in 2020. And then during the sports dentistry MSc, during that time, I've worked in NHS practice, I've worked for 111, I've worked in private practice, but for the kind of past 5 years, but 4 years full time, I've been working in the community dental services. So that's where I'm at today.
So if we go back a little bit, and we'll go in a little bit deeper, you said about your sport and how you wanted to continue your sport, and you had friends that possibly were competing in Tokyo. Gives me a bit of background into your sport and them sort of experiences you had as well when it came to orofacial trauma and things like that.
Yeah, so my sport is karate. So people always used to joke that I could kick people's teeth out, but also fix them. So got into karate at the age of 5. I kind of got bullied into doing it. I wanted to do ballet, but my dad was like, "No, your brother's going to karate, so you're going to karate." So
was that the save on 2 trips with the car?
Yeah,
or was it...
yeah, exactly, literally exactly that. Because my mum didn't drive, so it was always my dad what took us. So yeah, so kind of I got bullied into karate. I cried most lessons at the start, but then as I got older, I was like, this is quite cool actually. And then when they started to get things like the nunchucks out, I was like, yeah, I feel like Jackie Chan. So I carried it on, and then around kind of age 10, or I think I was 10 or 11, that's when I got my black belt in karate. And at that time, I then moved clubs to like a sports karate club. So that's, if you saw karate in the Olympics in 2020, that's kind of the version what's in the Olympics. So there's 2 forms. It's kumite, which is the fighting, and then the kata, which it's like all the techniques like put together into a little routine. So you'd think with me wanting to do ballet and dance, I'd want to do kata, but I didn't. I did the kumite. So I used to do all the fighting. So kind of once I got my black belt, it was just after that, that's when I transitioned clubs and went into sports karate. and this was a club in Yorkshire with a brilliant coach. I'll have to name him. He's called Paul Royston, and at the time he was on the England squad as well, so he'd been competing. So yeah, stayed with him, and then I ended up going through my like black belt second dan, black belt third dan, judges, referee qualifications, and then I was competing representing our association. So our association was one of the biggest in the country, but it focused on the Yorkshire region. So kind of South Yorkshire, we had people in Hull as well. I represented my association, presented kind of Northern England. I took part in England trials as well. And then obviously carried it on at university. So competed at British level. And then I got selected for the GB University team and then represented on the GB University team at the European Games. I was selected for the 2016 Games and the 2017 Games. So yeah, so I've done it a while, a long time. Going back to your question about the injuries, I've had quite, to be fair to say, I've done it a long time. It's not too bad injury-wise, but broken my nose. I've had lots of like tendon and ligament injuries. There was one time on a Sunday night when I was training and I took a kick to the face and it ended up degloving my sulcus. And at the time, I think I was fourth year, and I was like, well, I could go to A&E, but I'm in uni the next day, so I might as well just go to uni. So I went to uni and got them to assess me, and they were like, oh my God, this would be a brilliant case for the younger students. So then they came, and I never forget the younger student getting 2 mirrors to retract my lip, and then she just went, oh, because she could see like all my mandible. So deglove my sulcus. I've had a root fracture before, that was on my upper right too. So yeah, lots of I've had so many concussions to both my head and my teeth. So quite a lot.
The beauty of sport is by looking at you and by meeting you, there would be never in a million years that I would say she is a black belt in karate. And if you'd said that you were performing in a ballet, I'd be like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the nicest possible way, because sport has a way of being able to allow people to play or compete in something that you don't necessarily fit the bill as such.
Yeah.
And you know, when we look at karate, or if we look at combat sports, it's really, certainly with females, it's you're looking at kind of, you know, really bigger frame sort of, when I was everything I've watched anyway. But when I first met you, and I was only actually just in Dusseldorf there, and I came in at the exactly the right time when you were doing your presentation, which we'll get into later on. And it wasn't until afterwards that Peter was telling me, no, she's got black belt in karate. And I was like, what? Really?
Yeah.
So it's amazing. But I just find that fascinating, because you said that your dad took you to karate and you didn't enjoy it at first, and then you fell in love with it. And I took Nina to go and play paddle for the first time at the weekend there, and she's been doing tennis lessons for nearly 2 years. She could barely hit the ball, so I'm thinking, what's going on here? Where's all my money going if it's not going into tennis and paddle? Sorry to interrupt, John. Carry on.
I was just going to touch on about, so from a mouthguard point of view, it's not commonplace to have that in karate then, is it?
Yeah, so you do have to have a mouth guard.
Okay.
But in terms of, you've got certain like rules and regulations, like you've got to have a certain like karate, we call it, it's a karate suit, but we call it a gi. So, like you can't have certain badges, or like everything's quite strict. And like if you do have a badge, it's got to be a certain size. So so mouth guards was one of them, but they weren't specific. So you could have like Boyle in the Bike mouth guards and then custom made ones. Interestingly, when I think it was a cadet, it was in like the 14 to 15 year age group, that's when they introduced these new kind of face guards. And it's a bit like what we see the footballers wear when they've had like broken bones in out on their face. But obviously with us, it was like a clear plastic one. Fitted over here, over your nose, but it was kind of small, medium, or large. And obviously, most people don't conform to a set size, so that was quite bulky and not the greatest to wear. But I was quite lucky because they fetched it in when I was kind of getting towards the junior category, like age 16, and then when you got to 16, you didn't have to wear it. So protection, a little bit of the face guard, definitely a mouth guard, and then you had all like your hand mitts and your foot pads and shin pads.
And then when you experienced some of the teeth injuries, were you wearing a mouth guard? What type of mouth guard
Yes.
was it? Was it just
Yeah.
the nature of the sport, the fact there's kicks and stuff in it, that
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
maybe quite a lot of force even with the mouth guard in?
Yeah.
Describe to me about your experience about how effective the mouth guard was at helping with
Yeah.
prevention.
So the boil and bite ones, absolutely, like I don't think it offered any protection really. I think it was pointless, because that's when I suffered more of the injuries, when I had the boil and bite mouth guards. It wasn't until I think I was 17, and it's when I was doing work experience at the hospital or the local match facts, and we got chatting about what I was doing. So he was like, "Oh, brilliant! Right, let's have a morning, and we'll make you loads of mouth guards." So that's when he sat and did all my impressions and made all the mouth guards. But it's like I used to go obviously for my regular dental checkups, and I used to go every 6 months, but they never took an interest in kind of what I was doing. And it's like, if you would have and kind of thought more about kind of the mouth protection, I might have not had some of the injuries what I had earlier on. But it was definitely a massive game changer when I had my custom mouth guards when I was 17. A lot better. And I felt like I could, I don't know if this sounds daft, but I felt like I could perform better, because I felt like the boil and bite ones, you couldn't really, I found it difficult with breathing and like even talking in it, whereas the custom ones, they felt so much more comfortable. And then sometimes I'd get to the point where I'd be able to talk and you didn't realise I had the mouth guard in because my speech just sounded normal. So that was a lot better because I felt I could breathe better, and then obviously I could perform better as well.
Can you just talk us through, when you are getting your custom mouth guards made, what you're asking the lab technician to make for you specifically? So if you're taking a scan or if you're taking an impression, what you're writing on the lab prescription specific to your sport?
Yeah, so the last time, obviously it's been ages since I've had one because I'm not competing anymore. But we had, I think it was a dual laminated one. You can get like thicker ones, but the issue I had was I struggled tolerating things in my mouth. So it was weighing it up in terms of the thickness and whether I'd tolerate it. I know it was definitely dual laminated, but it was when I had all my initial ones done, we just kind of did it there and then. So we tried different thicknesses and made it. I was like, is that okay? Oh, right, she'll make it a bit thicker or make it a bit thinner. So didn't necessarily write anything because we was just making it there and then we made loads. So I had loads to kind of use.
You made up a really interesting point about how your dentist as a child, as you're coming up, never really took a lot of interest in it and never really offered to provide a mouth guard, which is really interesting because the Academy for Sports Dentistry in the US, they have started sort of quite a good campaign where they're talking about how every dentist is a sports dentist, because every dentist sees patients that do sports, whether they're weekend warriors or professional athletes. There's going to be some sort of percentage of your patient base that do sports. I thought that was quite an interesting point that you brought up, that, maybe all dentists, need to start to have a bit more of an interest in sports dentistry, even from the point of view of trying to see if people are doing contact sports or combat sports like yourself, and offering a custom-fitted mouth guard to help prevent some of the injuries that you would have experienced. So I thought that was quite an interesting point.
Definitely. And I don't even think like it's necessarily like the ones sports you typically think of, like the combatty ones, because I've had experiences of patients where, like netball, they've had a enamel dentine fracture because of a netball. And I play netball, and I've never really thought about wearing a mouth guard before until kind of I saw that patient a couple of months ago. But yeah, I do think, because with dentistry, a lot of it's prevention. Prevention is better than cure, and we'll ask patients about the brushing regimes, the diet regimes. So it's like why isn't that part of it in terms of the sport? Because you're thinking about prevention of injuries. But yeah, no.
In sports dentistry, it's not just about treating injuries. It's about optimizing oral health for peak performance.
That's right, because when athletes push their limits, every detail matters, even their oral health.
That's why the Sports Dentistry podcast is being powered by Philips, true innovators in oral health technology.
Philips Sonicare toothbrushes use advanced sonic technology to disrupt plaque biofilm, removing up to 20 times more plaque than a manual brush.
And that's critical for athletes. With high carb diets, dry mouth, and frequent energy supplements, there are greater risk of caries and gum disease.
Philips backs evidence-based dentistry, giving us tools that fit perfectly into performance-driven treatment plans.
So whether you're helping your athletes recover, protect, or perform,
elevate your protocol with Philips. I suppose that takes us on quite nicely to education and prevention, and where we talk about the master's program. You obviously said you were going to do it in 2019, but then you had to delay it. So can you just talk us through your journey of the 3 years, how you found it, how you found traveling to London? Obviously, we know that Peter and John are obviously the mainstay of that program, and then that'll lead us on quite nicely into your master's dissertation, which we want to spend a bit of time on. So just kind of talk us through. You said you found advert in the BDJ initially, then you applied. So just kind of talk us through your journey from there, and then we'll kind of take it to the dissertation.
Yeah, so I obviously applied. In my year, we actually only had 2 students to start with, and one of them has been a guest on your podcast, Elizabeth.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so at the start it was me and Elizabeth.
It's actually worked out. It's actually, you have actually been one after each other from online guests. It's just that we, in between the two of you, we've done our live podcast from
that's
the
right,
European Association and South Africa, but you're actually been one after each other on the podcast. That's quite a coincidence as well.
So because obviously I started September 2020, so it was right in COVID, so we had a lot of online lectures, and in terms of travel to London, that was limited at the start, so a lot of it was done online. And then in terms of traveling to London afterwards, because I was then on my own, I then came and did some of the practical days with you guys when I came for a couple of days with you guys. But yeah, the traveling was fine, although some of the days it was bad because I don't know why it was always a day when it was storms, so the trains would get cancelled, but we had a little bit more flexibility because it was just me. We could kind of work around like when I could come to London, and then things were going fine, and then due to start my final year. And then in August, literally 2 days after I got back from the Commonwealth, because I was volunteering at the Commonwealth Games, I was in a really bad car accident. So then that kind of completely changed like my final years and what we'd originally planned for my project as well. So then that translated to doing a lot of online, like poor Peter. He was doing a lot of video calls with me because I just couldn't. I had physical injuries, and then obviously I just couldn't travel. But yeah, so went on and did my dissertation. So because of my day job, so I'm a community dental officer. I see a lot of kind of special care patients. And when you looked at the literature back in like 2022 to 23, there wasn't really much literature on para-athletes, and had an interest in oral health. And I really felt strongly about doing some research on para-athletes. Yeah, so that's then why I decided to do that project. Originally, the original plan was to do a screening project alongside questionnaires, to try and assess the oral health of para-athletes at that current time. But then it got adjusted, obviously, due to the circumstances I mentioned. So I ended up doing questionnaires, but then interviews. But actually, the interviews I did with some of the para-athletes were really eye-opening. And I got information which I don't think I would have captured through the questionnaires or through the screening, but it was really important information and really important for us to consider how that'll impact on the para athletes and how it might impact on their performance. So yeah, so did my my project, my dissertation. I had a little bit of an extension, but yeah, then finally finished that at the end of 2023.
You kind of forget about it, but COVID really did mess everything up a bit, didn't it?
Yeah.
Because you guys started either side of COVID. Morris Group were able to get the first year practical done before COVID kicked in, but you were right in the middle of that whenever you were starting, and it really did. When you think, it's almost like a distant memory now, but when you think back about how much it messed things up. Just quickly, I was meant to ask you earlier, you talked about how karate was brought into the Tokyo Olympics and how you had planned to go out and delay it. I know, with depending on which host city it is, they have the ability to add a few sports in, like in the next one in LA, they're adding American flag football.
Yeah.
Is karate still part of the Olympics, or what's the situation with karate?
No, so it got taken out, but I've seen a lot of things about 2032. There are hopes that it will go back in for that. But I know, like, people say, well, you've already got taekwondo, it's quite similar. And then there's kind of a lot of politics involved, as there is with any sport. So I think that has an impact as well. But yeah, but it was like people who did see it in the Olympic Games in 2020, like, they enjoyed it and they liked it. So yeah, so it'd be brilliant to see it making a comeback. But yeah, we'll see.
And did any of your friends end up going to Tokyo?
Came close. So Jordan Thomas, he was like our first world champion in over, I think, 12 or 15 years. So he was world champion in 2016. So he was like getting very close to qualifying. There was Joe Calloway, Amy Connell. They both was on Team G for a European Games, but they just missed out, I think, on the qualifiers. And then the other person was Alton Brown. So he was actually my GB university coach. So he was great. He was lovely. But he decided he was going to represent Jamaica instead because he's dual heritage. So they all came very, very close. But because of how, I think they were limited to, I think it was something like 8 categories. So it wasn't many people at all. And then obviously COVID affected karate events worldwide. So that affected how many ranking points. And I think there was a lot of that what went into it as well. So yeah, so a lot of them came very close, but just missed out.
Yeah, this we're talking about COVID, they're affecting us, but I know from talking to different athletes that experienced a couple of Olympic Games that the Tokyo one was so strange because of COVID and the barriers, and just didn't have the same feel to compared to maybe somebody that had competed at Rio, the one before, or Paris, the one afterwards. Just touching back on then to your research and have a little bit of an insight into the great things that you were able to talk through with your para athletes whenever you were doing the research. But just give us a bit of an insight into, because this is a sort of area, me and Umar have spoke about this before, where para athletes isn't something that me and him see a lot of, and it's quite new to us. And we did get a great presentation back at the European Association of Sports Dentistry in Edinburgh in Murrayfield that time from para athletes, from a sports medic and a sports dentist. That kind of opened my eyes a wee bit to different challenges that the para athletes have compared to the athletes. And then I was fortunate enough to do some screening of the GB para swimmers before the Commonwealths as well. And that opened my eyes away again a wee bit to the different challenges there is for that athlete cohort. Can you talk us through what you found whenever you were talking to these athletes and some of the things that may not be a concern with the able-bodied athletes, and some of the things that are maybe not obvious and us as sports dentists have to consider?
Yeah, so with the para athletes, a lot of them are medically compromised. and with them being medically compromised, that in itself will bring more risk of certain oral diseases. You have got the biggest thing. What I found was it's their support crew. So sometimes, obviously, we might have thought of an athlete in isolation, and that if their oral health is poor, then that's going to impact on their performance. But for some of the para athletes, particularly the visually impaired athletes, they might rely on a guide to actually do their sport. So one of the para athletes who I was speaking to, she is a Paralympic skier, and she works very, very closely with her guide, and had worked with her guide for many, many, many years. Was due to win gold at a World Championships, but her guide ended up having wisdom tooth problems. He then had to have a surgical, which didn't go great. So then that took him out of training, and that meant he couldn't be her guide. So then she had to have a replacement guide who she'd not really trained with or skied with before. And then because of that, her performance was impacted. And then I think she ended up getting fourth at that World Championships when she was actually predicted to win gold. So for her, although she's amazing with all her oral health regime, it was actually her support crew which kind of then impacted on her. And it's the same for another para athlete. They mentioned about they were away at a training camp, and their coach had tooth problems, I think, or toothache for the past 4 or 5 weeks of this training camp. So felt like because their coach was complaining, and that was then impacting on them and their coaching and their performance. So they do rely more on their support crew. So it's really important to think about their support crew, not just the para athlete themselves.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that story as part of your presentation in Dusseldorf, and I was gobsmacked because although I've been doing this for a long time, it did not even cross my mind. And that just goes to show us just how much we don't know about para athletes and about what they have to go through, because it's not even the para athlete you're talking about, it's the guide. So that poses an interesting question. Is that's something where we have to look at more? We're not just thinking about the athlete, we actually have to think about the wider team that's involved, because they'll probably have a bigger support network than what you would with an able athlete, I'm assuming. And we're very ignorant when it comes to para athletes and what we expect of them and what we expect them to be able to do and achieve. But we also have to remember that it's not just about them, it's about the people around them. So how has that changed the way that you deal with and treat not just para athletes, but special care patients as well? Because my wife's she was doing her master's in special care until she became ill, but she's paused that. When we talk about that quite routinely in terms of the kind of medically compromised patients that she's seeing, but they also do have a lot of similarities when it comes to special para athletes, because there's obviously some sort of overlap there. So how do you go about things?
It's hard. It's hard. It's education. I don't know if this is a similar example, but I've had a case just this past week. So he's got uncontrolled ITP, so to do with his platelets, and has I think some sort of cancer as well at the moment. But his hematology consultant was wanting to put him on bisphosphonates, but needed a tooth out. So we had said no until this tooth is out, and then we need to make sure it's healed. And then we'll let you know, and then he can get put on it. But he came in for his review last week with me, and he was like, "Oh, I started that drug 2 weeks ago." And you're like, "What?" We needed to see if it's healed. It hadn't healed. So then it's then you're then having to educate his consultant. So a lot of it comes down to education and trying to have that open communication with them and obviously the team what support him. So that consultant took a lot from the conversations we've had in the past week. But it's trying to find out who's in their network and who's giving them that support. And in terms of with the para athletes, one of the kind of things what got brought up was like accessibility and being able to actually attend the dental practice. And that's something what we see on a special care basis as well. So it might be that we have to adapt our approach and might have to offer like a domiciliary visit. So it's in terms of the para athletes, you can then translate it to the para athletes, and it's like, well, if they're going to struggle to come to a dental practice, could we then think about just doing a screening at a training base? And it's kind of thinking more out of the box, really. But the network, and education, I think.
Yeah, I was actually going to actually touch on accessibility, because I remember you spoke about that while you were doing your research. It was a good example. Maybe you might, if you remember the conversation you had with a poor athlete about their struggles with accessibility, because we speak sometimes about the able-bodied athlete, about how they don't find time for the dentist, find it hard sometimes to get them into the clinic because we're an afterthought with their training schedules and the travel schedules. But we don't think about that then, the actual difficulties for accessibility, the different challenges for the poor athlete for accessibility. Could you explain that sort of example? I remember just when you were telling me at the time, it was quite interesting.
Yeah, so obviously a para athlete will have all the same demands as an athlete, so compared to obviously like a non-disabled athlete, but they will then have medical appointments on top of that. And then also they've got the challenges of actually getting there. So one of the para athletes I spoke to who was visually impaired, she relied on public transport such as trains to get to medical appointments, and she'd actually got 2 trains to get to a dental appointment. She was then stood outside the dental practice, and then the dental practice rang and said, oh, we're going to have to cancel your appointment today. And it's like, you've not thought about how much it's taken for her to get here. Not only has she had to navigate trains, then the cost of the train journey, getting there and getting back, and also her time as well. And and then the other example, I think this was the same athlete. She'd gone to her eye appointment at the hospital, at the eye hospital in London, so a specialist hospital, and was there, and you would think that they would be accessible and would have all the information in accessible formats, but they didn't have any forms at all in large print, which kind of just like blows my mind. It's like, this is an eye hospital. People are coming here with visual impairments and you've got no accessible information. Like, I know in my job, like, we have loads of different formats. They're printed on different coloured paper. Like, there's so many different ways, but you do need to put a lot of thought and consideration into it. And I think if people don't, I think you're a little bit ignorant. Because we do need to, they should be able to access care just as a non-disabled athlete or a non-disabled person would be able to access care.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely really interesting. I think it's an area that I would like to have more information on. My current clinic, it's obviously interesting to hear like yourself, but then you kind of work more with that types of patients, where at the clinic I am at the moment, I wouldn't really see it, but it's really interesting as well. And I think what we've tried to do with the next UK Sports Dentistry Association conference is link it in with power athletes. I know our friend Lyndon Maiden has been a big advocate of trying to have a day on power athletes, and we're linking that in with the next Commonwealth Games, which is, to my understanding, the only major competition that runs power competitions and able competitions at the same time at the Olympics and stuff. They have them as 2 separate competitions. What was your experience of working at Birmingham Commonwealth Games? You worked yourself and Umar were there. We were field of play, but I think you were one of the polyclinic.
Yeah, so I was based in the Athletes Village in Birmingham, and we had a good crew with us. Interestingly, one of the dentists I was working with didn't introduce himself and his role to me right until the end. So he let me boss him around, and then on the last day, he was like, "Oh, by the way, I'm a consultant in restorative dentistry at Birmingham Dental Hospital." So I'm like, "Oh my god!" But I've stayed in touch with him, and he's been amazing, and like keeps in, and he loves all the sports dentistry stuff. But yeah, so he does a lot of restorative and stuff at Birmingham. But yeah, so we were very, very busy. But this is where, going back to the comment when we said we don't just need to think about the athlete, we need to think about the support crew. We found that we were seeing a lot of the support crew as well as the athletes at the Commonwealth Games. So that was quite nice to see the coaches getting their treatment as well. We were super busy. There was one chap who was an athlete in the 80s, but then now he's a coach, and he never ever goes to the dentist in his country. He goes to the Commonwealth dentist, then 2 years later he goes to the Olympic dentist, then 2 years later he goes to the Commonwealth dentist. Then he sees like us guys as his regular dentist, and like he can still access that care now. I don't even think he's a coach now. I think he's just part of the delegation. So yeah, we saw a wide range of people. Some who were just wanting, like, we had some of the 4x100 meter male sprinters who got through to the final, and we had, I think, 3 of the 4 of them the day before the final, because they're like, we want our teeth to sparkle on the telly. So yeah, we saw a lot. We had some really difficult extractions because we had some patients with really thick and really dense bone. But yeah, we did a range of stuff. We did have a few kind of broken teeth, but not really much trauma. But we had a lot of mouth guards making. And then
so I would like to touch on that, because I know from Anna in the Commonwealth Games, one of the issues for the Birmingham one compared to other models was the fact that there was going to be 3 athlete villages compared to some of the other competitions like the Olympics and even the likes of Glasgow, where there was one sort of athletes village. So then the other tricky bit was the mouthguard procurement part of the sports dentistry support at the games, and the difficulty of being able to make custom fitted mouthguards. So the decision was made to use Upro's sort of hybrid custom fitted mouthguard, and we've had Anthony on previously on the podcast, and he spoke quite highly of it. But from your experience and working with the Commonwealth Games, how did you find that?
Yeah, so in terms of kind of like the karate stuff, I know that kind of the O-Pro stuff, a lot of that was quite popular with some, especially the Scottish karate team. They used it quite a lot. But they tolerated it well, the athletes. They quite liked it. And I think a lot of them were like, yeah, it's free, let's get it.
How was the fitting process? Because it's different than a custom fitter where you're taking an impression and your thermoform around it. What was the sort of process, the fitting process?
This is like years since I've done this, so I don't even know if I can actually remember. Yeah, I'm sure we heated it up with some hot water, I think. But yeah, I think obviously it's not going to be as good as a custom fitted one. But yeah, it was okay.
But the athletes, they were quite happy with it. They were happy with
Yeah. And a lot of them were like, oh, I forgot it, or I've lost it, or so.
It's interesting. You've always had a good experience at Birmingham, and we had a good time there being the field of play. My understanding is that in Glasgow at the moment, we still don't know what the provision is for dental treatment, and I believe it's going to be something to do with some private company. But again, even with us up here being so heavily involved with sports dentistry, we have no idea. And actually speaking to our medical colleagues, they have no idea either. So
I think Glasgow and Birmingham, even Birmingham to an extent, has been difficult from a planning point of view from the Commonwealth Games, because they weren't originally meant to host them. And Birmingham had a little bit of a more lead-in, so there was more time to plan. where Glasgow seemed the very last minute here jumped on board to take over from was it Victoria or Greater Victoria that was meant to do it. So I think everything that usually when they're planning for these things, they have like a 4-year lead in. And you're talking in Glasgow, like it's less than a year or just over a year. So
It's not been that long since Glasgow hosted the Commonwealth Games. That's
true.
kind of why they're bringing it back, because they've still got the infrastructure there. So obviously different provisos provide different things, and money comes into quite a lot. And obviously they've reduced the amount of sports as well.
Yeah, the last time Glasgow did it, they had a temporary setup. I think they used like an army type setup. It was like a temporary setup for the dental clinic, and they only did emergencies, and then they had a number of us at the games, and then they used a local dental lab to make the custom-fitted mouthguards that was located quite close to the athletes' village and where they had to be polyclinic set up. So I think even Birmingham was probably a little bit of a better dental support than Glasgow in 2014. So it will be interesting to see what happens later this year.
I was gonna say some, because I'm still in a lot of the medical groups and the polyclinic groups, and people have reached out to say like what's happening, because it's not just obviously like the dentistry, it's the other medical professionals and the physios, and they've been told that it's going to be recruited on like a private job basis, on like a paid job basis, so not volunteers. So yeah, whether anything will then come from it.
That's quite interesting, because a lot of these games really struggle from a financial point of view, and I think that's why they rely very heavily on the volunteers. And
that's why I was surprised.
A lot of the games that we have done as Commonwealth or the Olympics, it's always on a volunteer basis. So it'll be quite interesting to see how they plan to roll that out. So, but I think it also sets a precedent. If they are starting to pay people for these roles in Glasgow, then it almost says, well, the next time they do the Commonwealth Games,
you got to be paid.
There's that press there, so that'll be quite interesting.
But a lot of people, I don't know about you, but it's like I gave up like 2 weeks of 2 or 3 weeks of annual leave to do it, because it's like I love sport.
Well, Umar gave up 5 days. Umar got 5 days. Unlike the rest of us, Lisa, me, yourself, and Peter, we were there for the long haul, and we were slumming it in accommodation. Umar even got himself some fancy student accommodation and all to stay in.
Wow.
Yeah, I gave it 5 quality days. I had 5 of the best days. It was so much fun doing the 3x3 basketball and the beach volleyball. There's worse places to be than doing those sports. Yeah. And I remember the accommodation I had was actually quite nice. It was actually really nice student accommodation. I remember speaking to John and Peter was like, "Oh, it's some dingy place down there." You just start laughing.
We booked it through the official channels. It was the student accommodation as well, but it was really outdated. Student accommodation, yeah, it was. These are the experiences you remember.
Yeah,
I remember when I was doing the London Olympics, which was my first one, and I was quite a young dentist. I slept on a sofa for it. I had mates over that lived in London, and I stayed on their sofa. So at least it was a step up. It was a step up from the sofa of London, Birmingham. At least some grotty student accommodation I was happy enough with.
But I do wonder, like you said, if they are going to start paying, what's going to happen going forward.
Yeah, it'd be quite interesting. And what about yourself? Do you still do a little bit of sport? Do you still keep yourself fit, or?
Yeah. I can't do karate anymore. I could get away with it, like the amount of times I went into uni with like a black eye. There was one time I went into second year and I'd got an ankle. I'd done something to my ligaments in my ankle. It actually wasn't a karate one, that was a football injury, but went onto clinic on crutches, expecting to see my patient and do a fill-in, and the nurse was like, "Whoa, what are you doing?" I was like, "Here to see my patient." She's like, "Can you control the chair? You're definitely not seeing the patient." She's like, "Go." And then there was another time when I'd walked in and I'd had concussion, diagnosed with concussion, and then came in to do an IV clinic, and the tutor looked at me like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Not really." Ended up diagnosed with concussion at the weekend from a competition. She was like, "Right, get in the recovery chair." So they sat me in like the big sofa chair. So I could get away with stuff like that when I was a student. But then obviously when I graduated and I was working in the big wide world, I couldn't really get away with it as much, and income protection wouldn't cover me for karate injuries. So kind of it still did a little bit of training, but then obviously again COVID. So I am retired from karate, but I still play netball. So I'm part of like the North East Derbyshire League, and our team is called Spice Girls. Yeah, they got Spice Girls. We're in Division 2 at the moment. So yeah, so I do that every week. But then I'd like to like cycle in the summer. We've got a paddle board. So yeah, so I like to do all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
You mentioned there about concussion and your experience of concussion. We know now from, particularly with the likes of rugby, concussion's such a big topic, and we're doing a lot of the instrumental mouthguards and for the rugby and heavy water rugby throughout that into 2024. Even in the likes of that, that's really took off over the last few years, real awareness of concussion and the understanding of concussion. What's your experience with concussion and how it's managed in karate?
Rubbish. Yeah, rubbish. In terms of some of the medical support, I don't think, it could have been a lot better. But yeah, people just didn't understand it. But I don't know if this is because this was like 10, 15 years ago, and like you said, things have changed, and obviously people are more aware, and more research and more articles are out there, so people are aware. But yeah, management was not great, hence why I was like, yeah, they told me I had concussion, and then went to uni, and then it was the university tutor who was like, why are you here, you need to be at home. So yeah, not good.
Can you just dive a little bit deeper into your kind of symptoms of concussion? Because that's interesting.
Yeah.
Although we deal with concussion quite a lot when we're working with athletes, actually experiencing it yourself, luckily, touch wood, I haven't. So actually, it'd be interesting to hear your kind of experience of that.
So when I used to get it, I used to have like really bad headache. I used to feel really sick. I used to feel quite dizzy. And the biggest thing, what I used to really struggle with, is like bright lights. So like really bright lights. So normally, like on the day, like when it would happen, like it normally, I don't think I ever training, I was okay, because I was too good. I didn't let people kick me in the head or punch me in the head, but it was always a competition. So normally what would happen is my dad would bring me straight home after the competition, and then I'd end up going into my bedroom, they'd turn the lights off, shut the curtains, and then mum and dad would keep checking on me, and making sure I was okay, and then just making sure like I was keeping up my fluids, and then pain relief. So yeah, but I used to really struggle with bright lights, like on the day, dizziness, sick, and headache. Normally day 2, the light kind of sensitivity would get better, but I'd still feel headache and still feel quite sick. The headache used to normally stay for quite a few days. And then, as the days went on, things used to settle. And
I don't think I've had concussion, but I've lost consciousness a few times, I think. Maybe that's just wrong. But did you black out? Like when you received was it sort of like a repetitive thing and it came on without you realizing, or was it like one really hard blow?
Yeah, a mixture. So like I think the first time I was 11, and I remember like being on the side of the mat, and there was an oxygen mask on me. So I'm guessing I had blacked out. But then the times after that, as I got older, it wasn't blackouts. It was normally from like a really like powerful kick or a powerful punch, which shouldn't have happened, to be fair, because it's supposed to be non-contact to your head and your face. Hence why you don't wear like helmets or anything. But yeah, that it was normally like a powerful blow, single blow. That used to do it.
I had one time. So you don't really have the same sort of support that you get. Like, but I remember playing a friendly one time, and I was trying to tackle someone, and he got caught. I don't know why it was his elbow or his knee. And for like a split second, this is because it was so strange at the time. But for like 5 or 6 seconds, I thought I was taken right back to, was like 12 years old, and I was sitting playing Mario Kart. So for like this 3 or 4 seconds in my head, I was like sitting playing Mario Kart, and then open up my eyes, I was like still on a pitch running after someone. I found it the most strange experience I ever had. Like, there's another time I got a knock, and then I was out as like It was an underage match. We continued to play, but I still can't remember the first half. And I remember it was the first time I played in that pitch. So it was like I didn't know where I was, didn't know who we were playing. I just continued on playing to see the match out. And I still, this day, I can't remember the first half of that game. That concussion, like that would have been in the 90s. Do you know, when I was playing underage? Like, it wasn't a thing back then. And even when the time I was doing Mario Kart, that would have been in the noughties, the late noughties. So even then, it wasn't, maybe people were starting to get aware of it, but it was more or less, you got to knock play on.
Yeah,
Don't worry about
that was like
compared,
me. Yeah,
compared to the real awareness that we have now with it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because that was the same as me. So I was like in the noughties and then 2010s up until 2017 when I was competing and when I experienced mine. So yeah.
But that's the thing now. There's a big awareness about it with everything that's come out of the NFL and what's coming out with certainly in Scotland and in rugby in general with the if in doubt set them out. I mean, it's a disease or it's an injury that can't be seen, it can't be picked up, and you're going on signs and symptoms. And a lot of the athletes, like we've said before, they always want to keep playing, they want to try and stay on. They pride themselves on not coming off. And I think the instrument and mouthguards will, as time goes on, bring more and more data. And we can sit and talk about concussion so much, but it's still in its infancy in terms of how much they're trying to find out about it. And you speak to the medics and they say that the diagnosis, not the diagnosis, but the explanation of what concussion is used to be just one line. Now it's like 3 paragraphs long because it's always changing. So it'd be interesting for us to maybe look at getting somebody who does deal with concussion and who does a lot of that sort of work to kind of get them on. But it would be rude not to bring you on as somebody who is a karate expert and not talk about two things. One thing.
What we saying, Danielson?
I was going to say two things: Karate Kid, but the spin-off series Cobra Kai.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on that?
I only watched a little bit of Cobra Kai. It's okay. Everything's like obviously dramatized, isn't it? Because it's for a TV series or like for the films. Yeah.
It's one of my most favorite films ever, and it has to be. It's just everything about it, and Mr. Miyagi, and just the whole film, and it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Like,
Karate Kid was so good for raising awareness karate when I was younger.
Yeah, like my first club was very traditional, so similar sort of stuff. Like he'd get us running outside barefoot, like on the gravel and things like that. Whereas now, obviously, the parents would be kicking off big style, but my dad was like, "Off you go, there you go." And then
Don't worry
like
about that broken glass.
Yeah, and then it's like, they're back and no. So it's like that wouldn't happen now. So my first club was very, very traditional, and I think this is why I cried every time when I was little, because I was petrified of the instructors. But yeah, I think there's still probably some really, really traditional clubs out there, but yeah, things have changed a little bit.
I'm
sure there was one point in South Africa where John was doing the whole wax on, wax off stuff, but he wasn't doing it on a car. That's for sure.
I can tell you something similar from Karate Kid and Cobra Kai. Is that Danielson's acting hasn't got any better, because it's absolutely shocking. It's absolutely shocking. You think his acting skills would have improved, like.
Oh yeah,
but
sorry, I had to bring that up. I couldn't bring you on and not bring that up.
Have you been karate? I just think karate. It's traditionally from Japan, traditional. And have you ever been to Japan? Is that on the bucket list to maybe go out and?
Yeah. So like when we were originally obviously planning to go to Tokyo, we were planning on obviously traveling and doing a lot, because it was kind of supposed to be our honeymoon. So that was all planned, and then obviously COVID and life now has got in the way. So yeah, so it is on the list of things what we'd like to do, but yeah, we'll get there at some point.
And Umar, there's already a sports association out there, so don't be coming off this call and thinking we should start a sports association in Japan just so you can get a trip.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting. I'm still waiting to hear back from them actually. So but never say never, my friend. Never say never.
Lisa, it's been absolutely fantastic for you to come on and share some insight. Really looking forward to it. Really, like as I said before, it's really interesting topic you chose for doing the research in the Masters, so sort of an under-researched sort of topic. It was brilliant to get that insight. Well, I suppose we have to make sure we mention it that you won the prize in Dusseldorf for presenting it as a poster presentation. Congrats on that, and I think that shows just the quality of work that you did in that area. And the rumour is that you may be presenting in the next UK Sports Dentistry Association. Well, you are presenting, but just, I don't know if it's officially don't think you have a choice. So we'll look forward to hearing you again then.
Okay. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. Thanks so
No.
much for coming on, Lisa. And sorry about the start. Obviously, John just doing his usual, doesn't know what he's up to. So yeah,
Well,
we are
changing these
ultra-professional,
formats,
as you know.
it's these technical issues. We need it back to in-person events.
Yeah.
More. I think that's a lot easier.
Yes. Well, that's coming up soon, but yeah.
Thanks very much, Lisa. It was great to have you on, and thanks for sharing your story with us.
Thanks,
No,
Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great conversation we had with Lisa. Because I don't work with power athletes, and maybe there's not a massive power athlete program in Ireland. It's not something that's maybe done as well as it is in the GB. It's something that has never really been on my radar a lot. The Special Olympics seem to get a lot more traction in Ireland. A lot more going on with the Special Olympics in Ireland compared to power athletes. So we see a bit more of that side of things. So that's why I found it really interesting to hear some of the insights from Lisa, particularly the likes of things I would never thought about how the World Health of the guides can have such an impact on power athletes, and then the extra challenges power athletes have just to go to the dental clinic, just to get themselves to the dental clinic, the extra challenges that they have. I found that really interesting to hear.
That was the two main stories, wasn't it? The first story was about the guide who actually ended up having to go to the dentist, and because the guide wasn't able to compete or help the athlete then ended up missing out on a medal placement, and the athlete was tipped to win gold. And that must be heartbreaking, because not just for the athlete but for the guide as well, because they're obviously in a position where they're there to aid and help the athlete. But for that to have happened, I didn't even cross my mind that something like that could happen. But again, that's the beauty of being able to speak to somebody like Lisa, who's had that experience, by being able to speak to the individuals during her dissertation. And the second story was about the athlete getting to the practice and then finding out that they've had to two different types of modes of transport to get there, and be told that it's been rearranged, the appointment has been rearranged. Again, that's something for us to take in consideration, where normally when we talk about treating able-bodied athletes, it's about, trying to fit into their schedules and trying to make sure that you can squeeze them in. But also we need to consider, if there is a para-athlete or an athlete who needs extra attention, you need to give them enough notice and enough time to be able to do that. But also we need to consider who their immediate colleagues are who are potentially helping them compete. So that has been a really big eye-opener, that conversation. As you said, it's not something that we deal with routinely, but it's something that, now having that conversation, it broadens our knowledge and broadens our ability to be able to help athletes like that.
Yeah, it's definitely. I had the pleasure of, with my good friend from UCL, our good colleague from UCL, Julie Gallagher, doing some screening of the power swimmers, GB power swimmers in the lead up to Paris. And that kind of brought a few more insights as well. And Lisa spoke about it there, about the visually impaired. And we did some screening of two twins that I believe were blind. And what was coming on my head was, because I'm a very visual learner. I'm very visual. And even when I'm explaining things to patients, particularly now that with the use of the intraoral scanner, everything's very visual, and I find it really helps for me to get my communication across. I started thinking, how would these athletes know if they're brushing their teeth properly? How would they know, like, some of the things that we take for granted? That and one of them had a chipped front. They were identical twins, and one of them had a chipped front tooth. I think the sisters were playing, they're younger, and one hit one by accident or something. But it was a upper central incisor, and I was thinking as well, if that was somebody that was not blind or had full eyesight, they would probably be a lot more conscious of aesthetically how they looked, which is another complete consideration as well for that type of athlete as well, compared to other athletes that would maybe work with that would be a bit more aesthetically and how they looked. To them, it didn't matter because so it was like it's a world that I don't work in a lot. So it gives me great insights. I find it nice to find that insight because it sort of widens your horizons on things and makes sure that you're able to understand different challenges of different athletes. And as I said, I don't really see a lot of power athletes, but it gives me a better understanding of what their needs are and sports dentists that do work with them, the challenges that they have to face.
Yeah, and I think that opens up a completely different type of dentistry and sports dentistry when you look at that sort of athlete. And I remember being in Birmingham and seeing the wheelchair 3x3, and I was thinking, wow, they're like amazing at what they can do and their ability to compete and just get on with it, and their skills are still unbelievable. I mean, these are still the best of the best of the best athletes that are competing at this high level. Certainly, if it's in the Olympic Games or the Paralympic Games or the Commonwealth Games, they've put a lot of time, effort. You'd probably even argue even more so than an able body because they've had even more challenges. So I think it has certainly broadened my horizons and broadened my knowledge in terms of what I need to be able to do if I am going to be dealing with these athletes, or if somebody is asking the question or needs some help, then you have to be more conscious about that. And I'm really grateful to Lisa to, first of all, taking on that dissertation, and because it couldn't have been easy finding out all the information and having people who are willing to be able to tell their story as well. So hats off to her, and we are grateful to being able to have her on the show. And like you said, the previous guest was Elizabeth, and they had started the master's program together, and they've obviously taken very different paths after that. But that's the uniqueness of being in a situation where you've got one individual who has continued to pursue their dream of playing high level sport in Elizabeth, and then Lisa deciding that she doesn't want any more concussion, so she's just going to call it quits and do something else and play netball more, So
yeah, it's definitely interesting how different paths go, and both of them playing their sport at a high level, where an opportunity has come for Elizabeth to try to push on a little bit further with how women's rugby has turned professional. I'm sure if GB cricket or GB karate had a professional arm, that maybe Lisa might have been a bit more tempted to take a few more concussions and push down that path. So it's interesting as well, the different opportunities your sport has for you, and whether that's you can actually develop a professional career out of it, or if you're playing at elite level, you still have to keep a good focus on a career, because the likes of maybe these sports that are not these high profile sports that have a lot of money in the background, even though you are professional, you're maybe not going to make enough money to make a living, or you're not going to make enough money where you can stay in that sport. You have to have this other career on at the same time. We spoke a little bit about Elizabeth, about how it's very common for her teammates all to have other careers, and that might change in professional women's rugby in a generation when a lot more opportunities have developed, and a lot more of them might be just looking to create a career in rugby. So it'd be quite interesting to see how that develops. But it is interesting to see how different sports give different opportunities to people, even though they're at the top level of their sport.
Yeah, and I think each guest brings their own experience in terms of what sport they've played and how they've managed to juggle both being a healthcare professional and playing that sport, and to whatever level they play that sport. And I'm sure there'll be even more stories out there as time goes on, but each guest brings their own unique conversation, their own unique story, and I just enjoy listening to it, because I think it's something where, being in this unique position that we've said so many times before, we're giving people a platform to be able to discuss their history and their lives and what they've done with it and what they see about it going forward, and we're able to pick up little bits and pieces there, and it's allowing everybody else and all the other listeners to be able to incorporate that into their professional life or into their personal life. So, we've sat down and we've had a good look at the guests that are going to be coming up in the weeks to come and the months to come as the year gets on. There's, again, lots of really exciting things happening, and it's just about being able to get a wide variety of guests on and continue to push the bar up higher and just see where this Sports Dentistry podcast takes us, really. And, we're, again, as always, we're open to suggestions in terms of who we should get on and who we should speak to. So more than welcome to fire suggestions that way, myself or John. We're here for everybody to to gain more information from, but we also want to gain information from them. If there's something that we're missing out on, then let us know, and we'll more than happy to have a chat about it and see where we can go with it.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be great to get people from all different backgrounds in sports and grow. So we've seen a big explosion in the World Sports Dentistry group over the Christmas period too. We looked at it back in the summer whenever I was heading out to the ASD conference in Washington, and we looked at the number of countries and associations and countries represented and associations, and that was quite big. But that's developed. We spoke about it on the podcast before. Even just in December, we had South Africa, Georgia, and Turkey all launched associations. So it's sports dentistry is just growing, and it's going to be great to hear everybody's story and conversations. Not looking forward to another overnight flight to Dubai, but we do have some nice guests lined up when we get there, so we'll be having some good conversations out there. And I just feel like you love your flights more because you took us to South Africa. Now you're taking us to Dubai, and there's rumours that I'm going to have to spend maybe a day and a half on a plane come October. So I'm not sure. Can we not go to like Italy, like a 2-hour flight to Italy? There's sun in Italy.
John, it's all for the greater good, my friend. It's all for the greater good. You know, I wouldn't want to take you somewhere where I didn't really believe that we could do something special and help grow sports dentistry. I asked you to trust me with South Africa, and you did, and we managed it. I'm asking you to trust me with Dubai, but let's just see what happens with that. I know the maximum temperature in Dubai just now is 22, so you should be okay. That should be okay for you to manage.
And I've already asked to go to the water park, and you've said it's too cold. Which I completely disagree. I say it's perfect temperature. Perfect temperature for the water park.
It's too cold to go to the water park, mate. Too cold to go to the water park. When it starts to hit 35, that's where I'll concede. I'll say yes. But you know, there's opportunities. Yeah, we'll see. There'll be shorter flights available. But we did make a conscious decision that we were going to be more selective in terms of where we go and what we do, because obviously we have families that we need to look after and be around more as well.
And proper work.
And proper work. Yes. Proper clinical work as well. Yeah. So yeah, I suppose each episode will be explaining a lot more things, and there's always something happening. There's always something going on behind the scenes, and we are very grateful to be in this position where we're able to chat about something that we love. And yeah, I suppose the next time I see you in person will be in Dubai. I'm just hoping my flight, so I'm flying for some strange reason, I'm flying with BA, so I'm flying from Edinburgh to London to Dubai, but the turnaround time I have in London is 1 hour and 50 minutes. And by history,
15 or 50?
1 hour and 50 minutes. But my history with flying with British Airways is not very good. So I pray that it leaves on time in Edinburgh. And obviously the weather has been pretty mental just now with all the snow and the high winds and stuff. So I'm just hoping.
And the weather, the weather today ruined the Ulster match. Did you hear that? Ulster rugby.
No, I didn't actually.
They were to play the Cheetahs in the Challenge Cup, but it was fixed for Amsterdam because they were trying to grow the game. And the Cheetahs are from South Africa, and they had it done for Amsterdam. And they announced yesterday that the pitch that they had it down was frozen and was unplayable, so they're moving it to a different pitch, and they're going to have it closed. So it means all the supporters that had travelled to Amsterdam for the weekend weren't going to be able to go to the match. So that was announced yesterday.
No way.
An hour before the match today, they announced that the new pitch wasn't playable, and they postponed the rugby game. So they took a South African team, an Irish team, to Amsterdam to try to grow the game, and they've ended up postponing the fixture after a whole farkle.
And they thought doing it in January was a good idea.
I don't know. Sometimes you have these questions.
Oh my goodness!
So the weather has really upset a lot of things at the moment, but
I'll tell you, it won't be frozen
again.
I'll tell you when it won't be frozen.
Yeah, it won't be frozen. Well, don't be Scotland. You never know. The weather has been a bit erratic over the last few weeks. But no, it should be good. Should be good. I never even thought of flights staying in the direct flight, although there was flights out of Dublin last week when it was really. And that week cold snap was on, there was a lot of cancelled due to the frost.
Yeah.
But I think
we just keep our fingers crossed.
Lifted. Cool. Well, hopefully all be well. The next time I'll see you in Dubai for the next podcast.
I'll see you there, my friend.